So welcome everyone, and let me introduce our panel tonight on our self-publishing success panel. So on my screen anyway, because I know everybody sees things slightly differently, we're going to start from the top left corner. This is Lynn Rankin Esquer is joining us, and she has just very recently published a cozy mystery. We're going to talk about how she's doing, why she did it, etc., etc. Alyssa Jarrett is with us next in the top right-hand corner. And Alyssa has just brought out her third book in a series. Yes, and comes well equipped. And I'm very excited to talk to Alyssa about, especially about all her marketing prowess, which she brings from her kind of day job into her writing. And you can see that Alyssa is the only one of the authors here, very naughty, who has her book front facing behind her so you can all see her title. So,
And the other one right there.
so true. And then down in this bottom corner next to me, we have Wendy Adair, who has published her. Is it out yet, Wendy? The third book in your series?
No, I'm working on the third book, but I've published three because the
Yeah, you
first one
published three.
wasn't in the series.
Yes. So three books out, two in a series, and the third in the series coming, right?
Correct.
Okay. So this is the first time in I think I've been doing this for a few years now, years of doing this, that I've actually hosted a panel. So I think everybody has to be a bit patient. I haven't done it before, and I was going, oh my goodness, it's like if we always feel like we never quite have enough time anyway. And now thinking of how I'm going to split it between the three of you is giving me nerves. Plus, we have a really good attendance tonight. There are 23 people in the room. There are 45 people signed up. So I'm sure there are going to be lots and lots and lots of questions. So what I want to do is really make sure that we set up like just a basic understanding of what's going on here so that everybody can ask them more individual questions in context. And most of the people in the room will know me, most have taken classes from me, and they know that I have this like little personal adage that I use when I'm teaching, which is that no wind is a good wind unless you know which harbor you seek. And Linda's like nodding her head vigorously. And so I think I want to start there. I want to kind of scroll back so far back. I mean, and Wendy and this in your cases, we're going back before any of the three books. To the point when you were pregnant with your first book baby. And I want to know, and we'll start with Wendy. I want to know, Wendy, like when you're pregnant with your first book, like what were your hopes for that book and for being published and for being an author in the world in your publishing career? Like what did success did you think success would look like for you? What success did you want? Um, and this is important because I think in my years of teaching, we all assume that we want the same things as authors, and we actually want very, very different things. And so which paths we should choose are greatly affected by what we really want. So I'd really like to know, like, when you start out, what were you looking for? Did you want the blockbuster? Did you want, like I do, as everyone knows, the Booker Prize? Like, what did you want? What did you want?
Well, I went through the online certificate course at Stanford, which I highly recommend if anyone is interested in thinking about that. And so I finished that course with a pretty good intact book because it had developmental editing as part of the program. And I was still in the traditional publishing mindset. So I I wanted to get a good publisher and I wanted to get it out in front of people. And I didn't really think about it being a blockbuster or not, but it is indeed my baby. It's a very good metaphor for it. And so I started out on the path of find yourself an agent, find yourself a publisher, and go through the normal process of it. Um, I am retired. I'm old enough to remember when people self-publishing their books were considered to be vanity press and books that wouldn't qualify otherwise. So, but after 120 agent.
Okay, I'm gonna start you right there because we're gonna
Yeah,
talk
okay.
about that later. I just want to focus on what you want from the book. So I
Yeah.
heard you
So
say out in
I
front of
came into it
people.
thinking about it, I was going to do it through the normal process.
Right. But what you were trying to do with the normal process, you said was to get it out in front of people. So it was really the idea of getting your story out there and into the world. It wasn't, you weren't like vain like me, and you weren't looking for like accolades per se. You just wanted to be able to share your story. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Alyssa, what were you after?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you distinguished Plan A versus Plan B. I would say that I was a sort of a Plan B writer in the sense that I also considered traditional publishing. I queried three of the four manuscripts that I had drafted of this series. But I also knew that romance specifically is a genre that is extremely flexible and does not have the stigma that other genres do about self-published novels. So I always knew that I had a long-term plan to be a hybrid author, meaning that I would have some projects traditionally published, I would have some projects self-published. And so it didn't feel like an all or nothing decision to me. It definitely felt like I had a business mindset, I had a marketing mindset. I'm a highly commercial writer, and I just wanted to build an author career and become an author entrepreneur. That was my goal.
So it was actually something that could support your kind of like your author career and your author entrepreneurship that you were looking for. Like
Yes.
that, like commercial solidity for lack of a better.
Yeah, I don't have any desire to be in the literary space. I don't care about accolades or prizes or big highfalutin awards, right? Like I love romance and especially like the high heat spicy romance, and so that was always something that I wanted to write. And so I didn't give a rip what people thought of me or my books. I just wanted to build a business and share the stories that I love with the people that love them as well.
Okay. And Lynn, and saved you to last because I actually know what what you want because I made you write it down on a piece of paper.
I did
So,
the
but
dear
you
Steve. It's almost what Alyssa just said right at the end. I think like if you really boil it down, I love mystery. I love all sorts of, but I particularly love mysteries and series and great characters. And I wanted to create those and find the people who also enjoy those. I wanted to get it in front of cozy mystery readers. I mean, it turns out I think what mine's called is cozy, and those are the people I wanted to find. So my whole goal was, I mean, eventually, yeah, it would be so fabulous to make money, but and you'd think that would be maybe some people's number one goal. But my actual first goal was really write something good enough and enjoyable that the people who are reading the things I like to read would say, "Oh, this is great. When's her next one coming?" I wanted to find them. I wanted to find my people.
Okay, great. So at this point, Wendy, we can go back to where you were going with this.
My trick.
Knowing now what you wanted, um, your first plan of attack was to query the traditional way. So
It
tell us
was.
that story
It
now. What
was.
happened then?
And when that didn't seem to be working, I started to look into what it would mean to self-publish. And
And when you say it didn't look like it was working, just tell everybody like how many times you tried and what the experience was
yeah, I sent, thank goodness for email. I sent out 120 queries. I've gone to the query writing classes and kind of just worked my way through it. And I think I spent close to a year as I was doing further edits on the book, also doing queries. I got some interest that then didn't pan out, but not as much as I had hoped. And it's a hybrid book, so it's a little harder to shoehorn into a category. But then when I started looking at what the differences would be in self-publishing versus going through a traditional publishing house, there was an awful lot about it that rang great bells for me. And and so it was I took another class at Stanford in self-publishing to find out, what I really didn't know about the business side of it. And that helped a whole lot. And so I decided that's really the way I wanted to go.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack for just a second there. You said it was a hybrid book, right? And the word hybrid gets used so much in publishing and
You're
in
right.
a different in so many different ways. So Alyssa had just said that she wanted to be a hybrid author, which means that some books are published traditionally, some books are self-published. What do you mean by a hybrid book?
It doesn't, it's got aspects in it of mystery and of historical fiction and of a women's story. And then it's won awards in wartime fiction. And in fact, I've got more men probably reading it now than women. So it was not an easily
Right. So
identifiable book.
it kind of crossed genre boundaries all over the place.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what when you were looking at self-publishing then started to look a little bit more appealing to you?
Yeah, well, a lot of it started to look more appealing. And I'll start with the fact that I'm 75 years old. So the idea of taking 2 or 3 years to see a published book um, was less appealing after I really started to think about what it would take to do it. And uh, the more I looked at what I would have to do on the business side, the more intrigued I was by the aspects of really building it. And then you've got this huge amount of freedom that you're given and ownership. And I was hearing some um, horror stories of people who have gone through publishing and not gotten what they wanted in the final product. And so that rang very strong with me. Um, and the first book meant just a whole lot to me. I needed to get that out correctly and beautifully. And so it turned into a really solid, good decision.
Right. So a couple of things. One thing people might have noticed that I made I had this little wry smile when you were saying, oh, thinking that I have to wait like two years for a book, that just sounded too long. Just want you to know that one of my books I waited 9 years.
Okay.
Nine years.
Definitely don't have that kind of timeline. I can.
And this is for the room because the whole idea of these little discussions is so people learn about the industry. It took me 9 years between signing a contract and getting a book on shelf once. And my sister, who's also an author, coincidentally sold a book the same year, and that book came out 9 years later also. So it can take, I mean, they were both picture books, which take longer because of the illustrations, but it can be really, really long. So, Alyssa, so you kind of have a similar story maybe, or how is your story different?
So I would say, so I queried three manuscripts over the course of 3 years. And I envisioned this series of mine as a 4 book series. It's since grown to 5 because I threw in a holiday novella for this year. But at the time I thought, well, I'm just going to query each manuscript and then hold on them and see if I get any takers before I decide what to do with the series as a whole. I consider the series as a project. And so I didn't want to query the last one in the last book because no one's going to take the last book in a series. That makes no sense. And when I say series in romance, they're interconnected standalones. So you don't need to read them in order. They have the same cast of characters, but each book is a one compass love story. And so I must have queried about 70 to 80 agents per round. And over the course of 3 years with 3 books, I got what was called, I had a good request rate. I was getting like 10 to 15% request rate, which again, post-pandemic, when I started querying, is pretty good. I think a lot of the querying advice that you see online, if it's before the pandemic, it's obsolete. Like I'll say that like point blank. Like the industry landscape is completely different, and you're much more likely to get ghosted these days than ever before. So I would hear back from maybe half of them, if that. And so I would say that I got to revise and resubmit, which is I built a relationship with an agent She liked the story, but it needed some changes, and she gave me a really long editorial letter, and said, if you're willing to make these changes, I will read it again. And so in the back half of 2023, I spent 6 months completing that R&R, as they call it. And she read it again. And in the new year of 2024, she sent me a very sweet, soul crushing second rejection, saying that this manuscript is vastly improved to what it used to be. And I kept making notes on your voice, and I found that that was unfair to you. And so she stepped aside and said, basically, this book is ready. It's just not for me. And that was really the confidence boost that I needed, to say that I can do this myself. I no longer need institutional validation to tell me that I'm worthy. I don't need authority figures to tell me that I'm worthy. And so I basically said, you know what, I know I can do this, because I've gotten the feedback that I needed from the industry. And the very next day after that rejection, I decided to go indie. And then I published my debut 5 months later.
Mhm.
What did you do on day one when you said, okay, I'm
Oh,
going indie? What did you do on day one?
on day one, when I got that rejection, I cried like so much. I told myself I'm going to give myself a 1 day pity party. So I ate crappy food. I just laid on the couch. I just sobbed. Like, I texted all my friends. I felt like crap. And then I picked myself up off the floor the next day, and I was just so excited because that meant that I was in control now, and I didn't have to wait any longer, that it was all on me. I'm a marketer. I can do this. My brother is a designer. He designs my covers. Like, I have so much power. And so I was at that point, like, once I got it out of my system, I was absolutely thrilled.
So once it was out of your system, what I'm trying to drive at is when you were like, okay, now I'm self-publishing. What did you do?
Yes.
You write yourself a strategy? Did you, plot out a
Yeah.
timeline? What did you do?
Well, I'm glad I tried traditional publishing, because after I queried, I had essentially 4 books drafted. So I already had the backlog and the backlist ready to go. And so I told myself I was going to self-publish 2 a year for the next 2 years, and see where that takes me. And so that's what I decided. I published my first 2 books in May and October of last year. My third book is coming out this June, and I have a holiday novella coming out in November. And so I enjoyed getting my arsenal of manuscripts ready, during this querying process, because that means I wasn't losing any ground, right? I had the books already done, and they just needed to, be edited and proofread and formatted and just, produced, but the stories were there. And so I felt like I was set up for success, from the very first day, because I had done all of that work, in the query trenches.
Oh. So Lynn, to you were slightly different in that out of the box you didn't try the traditional route at all. So tell
No,
us.
I did actually. Long time ago. So I've self-published 2 books, and I did try the traditional route with those. And then eventually just thought, I'm just going to put them up there for whatever friends and family might find them and like them, because I put all this work in, and I'd like to think that somewhere in the world somebody could discover it. And I published the first one in 2013. So I feel like there's so many more resources now on self-publishing. I did, and I also didn't have the time then. My kids were younger. I was busy doing a million things, still working at other jobs. So now that I have the time, and I also feel like those first 2 books were a little bit of like learning the craft and starter books, and then taking your classes is when I really started to see there are a lot of options in going a route that's not the traditional route. And so once I really started to look around and dig into that, I realized, like, I mean, I love all the traditional books. I think there's, obviously there's always going to be a place for that, but I was so excited to kind of remove the gatekeepers. And for me, it's now about puzzle cracking. I'm figuring out the puzzle of how do you get your book in front of people? How do you learn how Amazon ads work? How do you learn how Facebook ads work? How do you learn? There's so many areas that I'm actually enjoying learning about. And it feels like it's all under my control and it's under my timing. And like, there's so many reasons. You've been an amazing resource. Like, you set me up with David Bloom, who did this amazing cover. I worked with Lisa Manterfield to get my blurb intact. So I'm having fun working with other people, but it's all under my control. And I tend to be, I like to make things and I like to figure things out. And so the making things is the writing the story. And then figuring out how to get out in front of people is the part that I've actually been surprised to enjoy. I'm not somebody who's a marketer. I don't, I feel very uncomfortable self-promotion. It didn't even occur to me to have my book here. So I've learned the next time I'm in something, I will have my book here. So I'm actually surprised to find out how much I can do from my kitchen. Like, I don't have to go out in front of people. I can figure out Amazon algorithms, or I could tweak some keywords and see how that works. And so it's actually been, that part of it's been way more enjoyable than I ever could have thought.
But I think what is unusual here, and as Lynn mentioned, she's been in several classes of mine where we actually discuss like all the different paths to publishing, and I believe Wendy's been in one as well. But I think that what is unusual with the three of you is that you can hear in your voices how energized you are actually by the challenge itself of the publishing, right? And Wendy, it sounded like that was a bit of a surprise to you, that it was only when you started looking into it that you kind of started going, this sounds like it might be interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that with you. Like,
Okay.
when did you find out that you had that the actual entrepreneurship of self-publishing started to have its appeal?
Well, it dawned on me that I've got an MBA and my background's in PR and marketing, just as Alyssa's been doing. And so I should, in the back somewhere, have aptitude for this. But then it just got to be really fun. Now, one of the decisions that I made that is a little different from what Lynn is doing, and I guess maybe what Alyssa is, I decided I needed someone to help pull all the creative and business ideas together, to work with me and for me, but that I wouldn't then have to go out and hire a designer and an editor and a copywriter and someone to figure out the difference between Amazon and Ingram Sparks. So that was one of the recommendations also from the self-publishing class that I took. So I had a couple of recommendations and found someone, and so now I have as I call her, a book doula. She helps birth my books, and
And so, Wendy, this is kind of interesting because you hear often about self-publishing where you do what Lynn did, where you're like, and Alyssa, like your boss, you bring all the resources together. And you also hear about hybrid publishers who like cut, and nowadays they cut several different publishing deals. They're different business models, but
Yeah.
basically they publish the book with you. But in your case, you're referring to an individual who just kind of comes in as
she's got subcontracts basically, and with a team, a designer, an editor, copywriter, and then she does the business side of it. So she, in fact, like we were talking today, she was uploading the changes that I've just done on my first book. And
But
so
and I presume that she does this for many clients. So this is
yes,
for business,
yeah,
but
this is for
she's
business.
not. She doesn't own the imprint. You
Doesn't own
actually set up
anything.
your own imprint, correct?
Yeah, so you asked what was the first thing that I did when I decided to do that, and it was to set up the business model. So I have a business banking account, even though it's not a LLC, it's just still a DBA, but I did the DBA, opened a bank account, a business bank account, got a business credit card, um, got a name as a publisher. So I am Bungalow Publishing, and designed a mark. So, I just set the business side of it up so that I could kind of launch myself into doing this. And then found Bethany and her team, and it showed me the difference of having the control and the ownership versus having an overseer saying, okay, this is all we can give you.
Yeah, no, I had a, let's see, 7-year stint as a publisher, so I totally get how fun it is to make books as something separate from how to write books, how to like make and market books. So so when we started, Wendy, and I'm going to ask you guys all this, when we started, you said that success for you when you first started out, when you were first pregnant with your first book baby, was to get your book out there. And so how has that gone? Because I know that The Broken Hallelujah, your first book, won a couple of awards, and got some national attention. So how's it been going?
Yeah, it is slow, and the one of the downsides is that it's for me anyway, when I'm doing the business side of it, that's what I'm doing. And it's harder to do the creative writing to move the next book along while I'm working on the business side of any of it. But so it's been slow, but I've gotten some very good reviews. It's gotten awards. It's bizarrely moved from what I had thought was a woman's fiction book to a wartime book because it takes place both in Vietnam and in modern Houston. Um, so it's been really well received. I'm about to relaunch it because this is the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. And so again, because I own everything, I own all of the designs that were originally proposed for this book. So my other favorite design for the book cover is what's coming out next week, with a mark on it that it's recognizing the 50th anniversary. So
Great.
I would never have been able to do that under a traditional publishing
Yeah.
mode.
I had my book reviews wish like celebrated its 20th, and it's still selling well like 20 years later, and I thought maybe I can talk the publisher into like doing like a little 20th anniversary push, and all I got was like one little GIF that I could put at the bottom of my website. And having been a publisher, if I was the publisher, there would be so much I would be doing that 20th year. But yeah, so it is really empowering to be able to do what you think is best for your book when you want to.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, how have you been finding it?
Yeah, I've been having a blast, honestly. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur because to me, when I work in tech, entrepreneur often gets conflated with like, a CEO who's getting venture capital and is growing a company of hundreds or thousands. And I had a very different idea of what an entrepreneur is. But I completely embody that small business mindset. I do have an LLC. I did establish my own imprint. I wanted to set up all of the proper channels because to me, I think that if you don't take your business seriously, I don't think you should expect anybody else to. And so it was important for me to establish credibility because I already know that I face stigma as a self-published author and I face stigma as a self-published romance author. And so I already have the literary community often considering what I do less than. And so I want to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward, which means that I'm hiring extremely good editors, right? That are at the top of their game, right? My brother is a fantastic designer and, he does this professionally. I hire the right people to build that village around me. And so I feel really confident when I'm talking to people that there's really no distinction between what I do and what a traditionally published book is capable of doing. In fact, I have had conversations with bookstore owners that said, I had no idea that you were self-published because it looks exactly the same. It looks exactly like it was supposed to look. And I find that a huge compliment. So it's been going really well. I think the statistic is that the average book, average self-published book only sells 250 copies in its lifetime. I've been doing this less than a year, and I can say that I have exceeded that number for my books already. And I just did my first free book promotion on my rock climbing romance, and 4,000 people downloaded it. And so while my marketer side is like, wow, that's 4,000 books you gave away for free. I also know that this is brand awareness building, and I'm already noticing in my Amazon dashboard they're starting to buy the other books. They're already reading the other books. And so I know that the investment that I make in my own business is going to come back tenfold. So if you're willing to put a bit of money and a whole lot of effort and time up front, you can keep all of those royalties for yourself. And so I also sell directly on Etsy, and I love the fact that I can do things like Kickstarter campaigns. There's just like so much flexibility that self-publishers get. And so I think especially as supply and demand becomes more of an issue, that there are just so many creative people producing and not enough publishers able to support that demand. The amount of effort that a publisher is going to make for you is decreasing. And so if I'm going to have to do all the work myself anyway, I might as well own it. And so for me, that's made the process like just so much more enjoyable than I originally thought possible.
Okay. That actually is the perfect segue into Lynn, but I'm gonna Lynn, I know that you saw that segue, but I'm gonna wait for a second because I also wanted to ask Alyssa. So you have like, this business mindset. I want to know what part of that business mindset made you decide to do two a year over 2 years.
So you have to understand the genre conventions, right? Like if I'm a literary fiction novelist, I can, and if I'm like a Kazuo Ishiguro, I can write a book a decade and I can make millions and I don't have to do anything more than that. But like the average self-published author to make a difference financially does need to produce faster. Especially in romance. Romance readers are absolutely prolific. They read hundreds of books a year. And so I even feel slow at 2 books a year. I would say like the authors that are at the top of their game are probably producing quarterly. And if they produce smaller books, they might be even producing faster than that. But for me, I'm a relatively slow writer. That's why I wrote 4 books before I even decided to publish. So I would have the backlog and give myself enough of a head start. But I definitely think that if you want to make a living at this, which is what my aim is, that you do have to think of your books as products and you need to be able to sell enough products to make enough profit.
So by that same calculation, then you decided not to go for a quarterly, wow, what a word, a quarterly release.
Well, that's only due to my own restriction, right? If I could produce faster, I would. But I think for me, because I knew that I would be querying future projects, I have to anticipate how slow the publishing industry moves. And so I told myself, well, if I get 2 out this year and 2 out next year, that buys me time to write the next book and query it and hear back and decide whether I'm going to go traditional with that book. So I definitely am playing 4D chess over here in my head and thinking like this. I'm not thinking about just what am I doing this month. I'm thinking about what am I doing in 2027.
Right. So now book 5, it sounds like it might be published traditionally. It might be self-published.
So the Glam Fam series is going to be 5 books. That'll be 4 full-length novels and a novella, and that will be out, within a year. So I would say by the back half of 2026, that series will be done. I will probably do a Kickstarter campaign for special editions and audiobooks. So I will try to maximize as much juice out of this series as humanly possible. But I am working on a rom-com mystery series, or I'm at least planning on one. And I do want to see if there's a market for it in trad. But it is a bit of a genre blend. Like I would love to talk to Lynn separately. Because I think I like cozies. I just wish cozies were sexy. And so
there's some, but yeah. Sexy cozy.
I want to do something where it's like a romantic suspense, but it's funny and it's cozy and it's just got good vibes. And but we'll see what the market reacts to.
Okay, so back to Lynn. That was a good segue.
Yeah.
Spotlight back to Lynn. And Lynn knows that what I'm going to ask her about next is that because Alyssa had just been saying how she was running these her first freebie,
Mhm,
and I know that you've been
mhm.
deep in the Amazon swimming pool, like trying to figure out different ways of doing things. And I also want to tell everybody out here because Lisa and I've just finished another of our intensive courses, and some people were very discouraged by the amount of tech that's out there and how much they need to know, and how and everything that Lisa and I do, we usually use a spreadsheet to start us off. And we have people going, "Whoa, but we don't like spreadsheets." And I said, "Well, you should meet Lynn and her great big ring binder."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you forgot to bring your book. Did you bring a ring binder?
It's like in the next room. I'll grab it in a second. Well, somebody else is talking. I will get you my binder. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you let us know, first of all, how's it been going for you, and what have you been doing in this Amazon swimming pool?
Yeah. So I'm very happy with the way it's going. And I think in part because your quote about the wind blowing where you need to go really was helpful to me, because what I knew was I have this, it's a planned series, and this is the first in the Cozy Mystery series. And what I really wanted to do was get it in front of Cozy Mystery readers. And at some point, eventually, when there's several books, make money on it. But that was really not the top priority. I just wanted to get it out there, and I wanted people to read it and see if they liked it. And so I did a number of free giveaways. And so I wrote my numbers down. My total orders, both paid and free giveaway, are 6,945. So I'm almost at 7,000. Almost 300 of those are paid, which actually is, and people have started going back and buying my first two books as well. But really, what's happened, I think, is people started, all the free downloads led to people giving it ratings on Amazon. So I got more ratings and reviews than I have friends. So some of them were actually from strangers. So, and that ended up being like sort of another measure for me, was like, I finally got some people who I've never met saying they liked the book, and it was like resonating with the people that I wanted it to resonate with. So that felt like a big measure of success. And so um, it's actually given me motivation to write the next one, because I feel like the reward is reachable. Like I know how to get to my people now. I know how to get them the thing that I know I found the people who want that thing. And so I'm just so inspired. So I write in the morning, and then I manage the business in the afternoon.
So give us some of these numbers, like when you said that you told us that your number of total
Mhm.
downloads, but you were also saying that you did really well with reviews. So how many reviews have you
So
got?
I have 125 ratings on Amazon. And my book's been out since February. And
Mhm.
then I reached number 2 in Cozy Mysteries at one point. I
Wow.
reached number 1 in men, women, and relationship humor. I didn't even know. I did not put myself in that category. I reached number 28 in lawyers and criminal humor. So, and I think I got as high as 67 in psychic mysteries. So, and Amazon, I think it's that flywheel thing. If they want to sell books. So if they see people are liking your book, they're going to show it to more people. And so the more you can get, even if it's free. And then I have I didn't even say the Kindle Unlimited has also been a huge source of some of my royalties. So at this point, I have 124,000 pages read. So you get paid by the page. And so that works out. If those were people reading a complete book, that would be about 327 books. Um, I don't know. It could be some people read part of it and didn't finish or whatever.
Or they're still reading, so
Or
the
they're still
numbers are
reading.
going to
Because
go
what
up.
happens with the free downloads is it's free for one day. So people will go on, download a bunch, and they might not read it for a month or two. It might be like on their list. So I think I'm still seeing the results of
Mhm,
some of the early free downloads.
mhm. So I think that would be an easy question to ask you then, Lynn, in all of this, and I've got my one eye on the clock as well. In all of this, like, what do you think was the biggest contributor to your success?
I think um, finding cozy mystery readers. And I think part of that is I'm lucky, it's a very specific genre. And people who sign up for a lot of these free things, kind of like romance, a lot of people do it digitally, read them digitally. And so I could find people digitally, give them something for free that wasn't really costing me anything. But I found my specific group of people who would like my book and who read a lot.
So what I'm hearing though is that when you say finding your readers, that
Mhm.
the free giveaway to you was what cracked that.
That's what it feels like to me. I have on my website, I have a resource page if anybody wants to look at it. It's just lynnrankinesquer.com. I've written down I've put all these resources that I've used. And so I don't even know how to say his name, David Gogren, or I don't know how you say it.
Goffrin, David
Goffrin.
Goffrin.
So he had a list on one of his sites of all these promotional sites, and he kind of rated them, which ones work well, which ones don't. And I went on and I looked through them, and I found ones that determined like people could sign up for. I specifically went cozy mystery free book of the day, and so I signed up with them, and those ranged from like 40 to maybe 60, $70 to do it for one day. So it wasn't a huge output for me, but it got me like 4,000 people in a day, like Alyssa, like you said, there really are a ton of people who go on to these sites. So that was a good find for me. And my mindset also was I don't have to make money on this immediately. I'm willing to give this away for free. I
Right.
just
But
really want
you're seeing this book kind of as a lost leader that builds
exactly.
that fraternity with.
Yeah, and then it kind of reinforced for me that it's worth my time because people really have liked it. Like people
Mhm.
have like contacted me through my website and be like, when's the next one out? I'm really excited to read the next one. So now I feel like, oh, I'm not just writing into the void. Like for
Right,
years, I
right.
felt like I was writing into the void. I'm like, well, somebody like this, I don't know. And the writing is very enjoyable, but it also is really nice to know there are some people out there waiting to read the next thing I wrote.
Right.
Yeah.
That must feel nice.
I know.
I'm like, I don't know yet. Um, so, um, so, I wanted to ask you, you just said that it didn't matter to you whether you made money or not.
Yet. I
And
mean,
then,
at some point.
right. So at this point, have you broken even, or are you a couple $100 behind? Are you thousands of dollars behind? Like, so everybody's sitting here going, wow, we want Lynn's success.
Yeah,
How much are they going to have to be willing to put in without
right.
knowing for sure it's coming
So
back
I
in?
tried to add it up so I could give you a good guess at it. So if I add up like my promotions, the cost of my cover, paying for editing, all that kind of stuff, it came out to be like 2,600, close maybe somewhere under 3,000. I've made 1,000 so far. And my Amazon ads, I've finally tinkered with them enough that now I'm making more than I'm spending. So I feel like I've gotten those on track. And
Right.
and I have a theory also about this because I have a friend who's her kid, she's just an empty nest and she has something she's really interested in going back and taking some classes on. And she was like saying, oh, I don't know if I should spend the money. And I was like, it's like our kids' sports. Like I paid for my kids' sports fees for soccer, t-ball, like every season there was some new sport. And we were not counting on them going pro in that. They were learning something, they were enjoying themselves, they were being entertained. So I think of like my writing classes, and so a part of that is like my sport, you know?
Right.
That
Yeah.
said, I am trying to keep track of like when will then this feel like it's profitable.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I remember once complaining to my brother that I was losing money on my publishing company. Surprise,
Mhm.
surprise. I was surprised actually, but I was losing money, and he just said to me, "Well, just think of it as an MFA." And I thought, "Oh, hell yeah, that's a really cheap MFA."
Right.
You know? All
Right.
right. So thanks for that. And I'm going to go on to Alyssa, but can you put the your URL in for us, and even the one specifically to that resource page? That would be
Yeah,
great.
sure. And I will go find my binder. I'll be right back with
Thank
it.
you. Yes. I'd love to see your binder. And
Yeah,
so Alyssa, yeah. So tell us.
Yeah, I'll cover both bases. So in terms of like what I think a measure of success is, like first and foremost, like you need to know your genre backwards and forwards. Like if you write fantasy and the last fantasy novel you read was The Lord of the Rings, like you're gonna need to catch up. Like you're like meaning that you need to understand like what books people are reading today, what they're falling in love with now, what the genre conventions are now. And so like I eat, drink, breathe romance, especially contemporary rom-com, which is what I'm writing in. And so it's really important for me to do market research. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily like trying to capitalize on a trend or trying to write to market, but I understand like what romance readers are expecting and how to structure a book in a way that meets their expectations. Um, and so first and foremost, like understand your genre. And then to Lynn's point, like on the finances, um, you're always going to spend more upfront just building sort of the scaffolding of your self-publishing foundational business. And it gets cheaper with every single book. Like, for example, you have to buy ISBNs if you want to get out of the Amazon ecosystem and like get into bookstores and libraries. And so I bought a 100 pack of ISBNs, which probably cost me like $480, but like I can publish 100 books with that amount of money, right? And so, or a lot of people say Vellum, the formatting software, is expensive, and $250 is expensive in one go. But I have it for the lifetime now, and every single book I format gets cheaper the more I use it. And so I will be upfront and say, like, I have not turned a profit yet. I have spent thousands of dollars on each one of my books. But that's because I believe in paying. I believe in paying for what matters. And so I have seen some friends of mine get poor reviews because they tried to edit their books themselves. And no matter, I have a master's in journalism, and like I would not do that. And so if I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't recommend anyone else do it. And so it doesn't mean you have to spend like top dollar, but it doesn't mean that you're terrible if you do. And so I believe in paying people market rates. I believe in paying people what they're worth. My brother is my cover designer, and I still pay him market rate because I don't believe in exploiting friends and family. And so I would rather be like in the hole for a little while if it means I'm building like an ethical, sustainable business. I know a lot of people will cut corners. They'll get it on the cheap. And what that usually means is they will get a very shoddy editor. They will get a AI generated cover. And they will get like artists like that are offshore out in like the Philippines that can work for like pennies on the dollar. And so like, if that's the business you want to build, like all power to you, but like that's not the business that I want to build. And I think especially when it comes to working in tech and seeing what AI is literally decimating like so many jobs, including my own, right? Like I find that really distasteful. So I have a lot of like very very feisty opinions on the subject. But if you know your genre and you have respect for your readers and you're willing to like make the best product possible, like I think you're going to set yourself up for the success in the long run. And if you have the money to spend, like, yeah, why not? Right? Like it was so funny, Lynn, that you used the example of your kids' sports. I don't have children, but my husband works in finance. I work in tech. We both have pretty lucrative industries and careers. And he said, you know what, Alyssa, if you blow $1,000 a month on a book and you had fun while you did it, like, whatever, like it's your business. Like I'm not ever having children actually. And so I'm as long as I feel like I am building the career that I want, and I know I have faith in myself that it will turn a profit in due time. Like I'm comfy, just riding the roller coaster and enjoying the ride.
But if I were to bring it down, it sounds to me like that your one big tip for success would be that you kind of pay for quality. You believe that
I believe in paying for quality. I think that bookstore owners and I think people in the publishing industry, I think they respect that. I think I was a journalist. And so when I talk to the press and I have a press kit, like I just look credible and legitimate. Like if you go to alyssajarrett.com, like I hope you think, wow, that is a really nice looking website. And I would say thank you. Like I worked really hard on it.
Oh,
So
and actually talking about dropping URLs into chat,
Into the
can
chat,
you
yeah.
drop the link to your press kit? Because I've had
oh, for
had
sure.
lots of
Yes.
writers ask me before, what is a press kit? And I was one of those people where when I met Alyssa at another function and I said, would she like to come and chat to you guys? And then I sent out my little email saying, "Oh, remember you said that you were going to come chat?" And her response was, "Yes, absolutely. Here's my press kit." I was like, "Whoa!" So yes, everyone should go and look at your press kit.
Yes,
And
I'll drop in my links, and again, I'm an open book, so if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact me, and get all of the dirty details. I'm happy to chat.
that would be great. And Wendy,
Yes.
back to you for a moment. I want to actually get from the Broken Hallelujah to how that set you up for your series that came afterwards, and how that series is doing in addition to the Broken Hallelujah.
Yeah, and it's cozy mystery as well, and it is designed to probably be either a 3 or 4 book set before I take on something else. I've been using the same group of people to help um, put it together. I think Alyssa's strong endorsement of doing the top quality, particularly in editing and in design, um, really does make a difference. I I must read 20 books a month. It's just like how I spend a lot of my time. And nothing pulls me out of a book faster than a bad edit or grammatical problems or continuity problems, which getting a really good editor will hopefully prevent that from happening. So if you're going down this line, I can't emphasize enough what Alyssa was saying about get the very best people doing it for you. And I mean that's the whole reason for doing this is that you're the one in control, um, which means that you're responsible for both ends of it. Uh, the After I finished the Broken Hallelujah, I decided to do cozy mysteries because that's really what I like reading, and um, so came up with a uh, plan for doing a series of books with a different detective, if you will, amateur in each one, but they're all work on each other's stuff. So it's 3 generations of women. Um, and I did like similar to what Alyssa had done. I finished the first one, got it all ready, got the design for the cover done and the cover for the second one done, so I could include it in the promotion on the first one, and then waited maybe about 3 months before I released it, so I'd have about less than a 6 month drop before the second one hit. Um, I'm not having quite as fast a turnaround on the third, but that was my intent because I think that makes a big difference. I I usually do the free Amazon giveaways. You can do one every 3 months, and so I generally will figure out something to drop it in. And back to the Hallelujah book, since it's a Vietnam-based book, I do a giveaway around Veterans Day and Memorial Day every year, um, and that just gives me another reason to push stuff out. Uh, so it's a slower process. I am learning from Lynn as we go on tapping into some resources that I hadn't. One of the things that I did do, particularly for the Hallelujah book, because it was more complicated book than the genre ones are, um, is to take the time and set it up for some of the award operations. And that has helped that book a lot. I'm less devoted to that on the cozy mystery side, but I have sent it in for a few of them. But I've been able to kind of use the well, actually, I take advantage of the fact that it got really good, um, some really good prizes to just attach that glow, if you will, to the Cozy Mystery series as well, because I am officially a nationally award-winning author now. You only have to do that once.
That's right.
Really
Except that you
honest
have to
about it all.
project it a little bit more
Yeah,
strongly.
I've even got a medal. I mean, it's very
There
cool.
you go.
And I think it shows the growth and the acceptance of independent publishing, which I really like the concept of better than self-publishing.
Mhm.
Because the award that Hallelujah got was for the bronze medal in wartime fiction from the Independent Book Publishers Association. And I think it's a legitimate entity, and it's the right place for me. And I'm retired and I don't have a money problem, so I spend money that I would have gone to Vegas with, I guess, to make this happen because it makes me happy. So this is as much my own way of keeping my brain working and enjoying myself
Mhm.
uh, with much faster gratification from it than if I had been hooked up with a publishing house or even
Yeah.
an agent at this
And
point.
probably better odds than Vegas too, I think.
Yeah. At least I have a little bit more control over what's happening with my money in this way.
That's right.
Um,
But okay, so on that point, control. I remember when I first offered my very first publishing class, it was after I'd been running Goose Bottom Books for a while. The first thing that I said to everybody in the room was that what I was going to tell them was really depressing, but the reason for sticking through the course, was that I was going to tell them everything that I had learned that I had wished I'd known before I got into publishing, right? All those things that you just don't know that you don't know until you're in it. So for Wendy, we've all talked now about success and what brought us here. But what was the one thing that made you go, oh shoot, I wish I'd known that first? And that might be a great tip for someone coming up behind you.
Well, I was naive about how much um, you had to understand the intricacies of the Ingram Sparks business and the Amazon business to be able to get it at a good enough advantage. And where if you take one path, you're going to have to shut down two others or not. So I am on Kindle Unlimited. It does tend to limit some of the other ways that you can use ebooks to be able to use that venture. So it's just a matter of looking at all of it and making your choices as to what's going to work. And that was one of the helpful things I got from working with my crew, because that's one of the things that Bethany does, is all the business crunching of it. So down to she was putting up the new material on Hallelujah on Ingram Sparks today, and it's like, it's Thursday, we can do it on Thursday, we can't do it on Friday because they screw everything up if you do it on Friday. I mean, it's just that kind of stuff, that who would have asked that?
I'm not buying the Wednesday car. So talking about URLs, I put your URL up for you, Wendy. Someone asked for it in the chat, but I was wondering
Oh.
would you mind sharing Bethany's contact information with the group?
Sure.
Because there might be someone out there who also would love a
Yeah.
midwife. Yeah.
And she is a great midwife.
Good.
Okay.
And
You got my book, my website's already up, did you say?
yeah, I did put your website up. So
Okay, thanks.
you have Bethany's contact, that'd be great. And Alyssa, what was choose something for us that the biggest thing, the biggest uh-oh moment?
I don't necessarily think an uh-oh, but I think the one mindset that most people have to shift as an author, especially if you're thinking about traditional publication first, is that a lot of what you think is important isn't that important. And when it comes to moving the needle. And what I mean is, like, I'm sure a lot of you, like me, have the dream of, I want to see my book in bookstores, right? Like I want that physical product. Like I want to see it on the shelves. And then you go upload your book into Ingram and you realize that you're making $1.83, if that, on every bookstore copy. And I learned very quickly, I love independent bookstores. I love every bookstore that features and supports my books. But bookstores, when you're self-published, is a vanity project. Like it's for your ego, and that's totally fine, right? You can have bookstore events and you can have parties and do all of that, but you're going to sell 20 books that day, and you're going to make $1, if that, per copy. And when you, especially if you're in romance, like shifting my mindset to be an indie author and have the ebook first mindset, that's when things start moving the needle. And so you have to think about your different income streams and what's going to make you the most profit, if that is a goal of yours. And you'll quickly realize that, like, the traditional model of, you know, trying to get as many pre-orders as possible and trying to get into bookstores, like a lot of that is going to be wasted effort, when most people who buy ebooks want it instantly. They want to read fast. They want to read now. And it takes a different attitude. And it doesn't mean one is better or worse than the other. It just means you have to stop thinking like a traditional publisher and you need to start thinking about what your reader is doing and how they're consuming books. And so, for example, I noticed that some folks are talking in the chat about, you know, hating giving anything to Amazon. Like, I understand where you're coming from. Amazon is like a necessary evil, but Amazon owns 80% of the book market. 80. If you do not sell on Amazon, like, the odds of you making any money are minimal to null. And so you have to keep that in mind. If that's something that you don't want to invest in, then you're going to have to work that much harder to sell wide and sell direct. And, you know, maybe you do a Kickstarter campaign and you get folks to fund you directly. Like, you got to get, if you want to break out of the traditional mold of how books are sold, you got to get creative. And so just keep that in mind and keep your eyes wide open when you're making these business decisions, because every time you steer away from like sort of the industry standard, you're going to have to manage some pitfalls in some way. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but oftentimes we have to play with billionaire companies that like to go to space, regardless of how we feel about them personally. It's just the reality.
But having said that, though, I remember when I first started teaching saying, don't forget, like, that, you know, independent bookstores are 80% of books sold. I haven't aged a day in that process. Lynn, what was your big learning or big, you know, I wish I'd known that before. Not that it obviously affected your final satisfaction, but that you wish you'd seen curveball.
Well, I'm going to tweak that a little and say what I would wish to hear if I was listening to this as a listener earlier in the process, which is this sounds like a lot. It sounds very overwhelming if you haven't taken on all these different things. I don't have a marketing degree. I don't have a business degree. I'm pretty average with tech. It's just a matter of putting in the time. And I've just put in the time gradually on learning each little bit of it. So if I was sitting here listening and I didn't know any of these, I might feel really overwhelmed, but they're all knowable. There's resources to learn each part of this. And like, we're all talking now from a place where we've spent the time to at least tap into some of it. I feel like there's a lot yet I haven't figured out, but it's not unknowable. It just takes some time. And it's also, I don't think it's ever too late to even help a book that you already published online. Like, there are ways to go and promote that. So I think if people have put something out and nothing happened to it, it's not too late. I don't think it's the same as traditional publishing where if you don't get that big push right away, it's out of the stores and it's over. There's still a way to learn about how to find your people if you have a book online.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's
Yeah.
actually, I think it's really interesting that Lisa, for example, our friend Lisa Mansfield, always talks about the long tail.
Yeah.
She calls it the long tail because it's always out there and you can always
Yeah.
pick it back up and push it again. And I've always found that very interesting because in the days when I used to teach publishing and say, oh, 80% of all book sales are in bookstores, the other thing that I was saying at that time was that, but be careful with self-publishing because you have to deal with the long tail. And the long tail in those days was seen as a bad thing. The long tail keeps growing and growing and growing. And instead of competing with the maybe 1,000 titles like on bookshelves with you for
Yeah.
that quarter, you're dealing with the 3 million that's backlisted on Amazon right now. You see what I mean? So that was the long tail. So I think that it's really interesting that as this industry changes, some of these words start to mean different things or take on different auras, whereas long tail was bad, now the long tail is good, whereas hybrid once sounded like something, hybrid now means something else, whereas, self-publishing once had a stigma, it's starting to, look in this room certainly as if it's something that spirited, entrepreneurial, positive-minded, adventurous people might want to do just for the fun of it, right? So I think
And here's the binder, by the
yes,
way.
I was going to say. And then, how did you organize all the things that you found to be learnable and knowable?
Yeah, I just started like sticking tabs. Like, this is what I learned about ISBNs. This is what I learned about Facebook. This is what I learned about launch. This is where, I learned this person talked about this thing called Publishers Rocket. That's how that works. Like, so as I just got things, I like to have a printed out copy so I can like visualize it and then organize it and then I can flip through. So,
and I think that would have been such a solace in my yay!
All right.
Such a solace to some of my writers because they thought that they had to deal with all these spreadsheets and all these, and everything's digital, but it doesn't have to be. You can find it online, you can print it out, and then
it's exactly what I did. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's open up to some questions on the floor in the 20 minutes that we have left. And so if you haven't been with us before, the way that you get to the head of the line to ask a question is to raise your hand with your raise a hand button. And if you can't figure out how to do that, you can actually put your hand up and wave to me. Does anybody have any questions? No? Silence so far? I know that George had a question earlier. He wanted to know from the panel, so you guys can choose who wants to speak first, whether you found it, that doing, bookstore visits or personal appearances or any of that marketing stuff, whether it's made any difference or moved the needle for you guys.
I'll say something first. I'm very resistant to that. Like I said, I wanted to see how far I could get from my kitchen table. So I'm kind of seeing like, do I need to do that? At some point I maybe will, but I haven't done any kind of bookstore thing yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say I have done bookstore visits. I've done book conventions. I do highly believe that using all marketing channels available to you, and events is one of those channels. I think it gives you great practice to learn how to pitch your book and how to talk to other people about it in a way that's engaging. So if you don't have a lot of public speaking experience, it's a fantastic way to get some. But I do think that being as like specific as possible will help you. Like, I would much rather go to a romance convention rather than just a regular book convention. Like, try to get as targeted as you can to your reader if possible, and go into markets that make sense for you. So that might be start local, right? Like, start in your city. And build relationships with bookstores there and event organizers there, and then start branching out. I am also a marketer in my day job, and one thing that I do recommend is to not just limit yourself to like the reader's mindset, but think about what ancillary events you can do related to your book's themes. So, for example, my second novel, Love on the Rocks, is a rock climbing romance set in Yosemite. And so it's about rock climbing. And I held a book signing at a climbing gym near my house. And so I was able to sell quite a few books there. They're not necessarily readers, but I mean, no author just walks into a climbing gym and like puts a table up. And so it was kind of a unique experience for people. And I ended up finding a group of women who were in a book club together, and they just so happened to be climbing that day. And so they all bought my book to be part of their book club. And so, what is your book about? Think about what your book is about and think how can you leverage that in your in-person events as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I certainly have done it with the Vietnam book. And so I've done a lot of things with veterans groups and around Veterans Day, and have done some readings with some other authors who have written in war genre. Um, uh, and one of the Vietnam veterans who helped advise me on the book is a poet. And so he and I have done a couple of things together around some of the different Memorial Day events. And getting some book club activity is just now starting for me. So I think that's been kind of fun. And then I did this really silly thing but I really like it. But I've got 3 covers done on my cozy mysteries. And so I've gone on Shutterfly and had mugs built with the covers on them. And so people that are hosting book clubs with my book, it's been my thank you gift to them. And it's been really fun. So I think even doing just kind of minor merchandising in conjunction with your books is a fun thing to do. And it's not particularly expensive.
Yeah,
Yes.
bookmarks are really cheap, stickers are cheap.
Postcards and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the only thing I'll add to that is that I think that the original question was like, do these things work? I think that part of the answer of that is that you need to pay attention to what you do well and what you enjoy. Because if you enjoy doing it, then right off the bat, the chances that it's going to work is so much better. Your energy is better. People find you more engaging. And I am a huge believer. I don't like social media, as a lot of you know. I'm a huge believer in getting out there into the world, but that is so much part of me. Like if you know anything about me, you know that I like interacting with real, live, talking people. And you never know where these relationships go. I've done one reading to find one person at that reading, is teaching at such and such a university and would like me to go and talk there. And then you talk at that university and somebody mother owns a bookstore, and then you get invited there, and it just snowballs on you. So I would just say that if you're looking at the whole thing the way Lynn does with a bit of trepidation, I don't want to do it, you probably shouldn't do it. You should probably put your energy into doing something you can do from your kitchen that makes you feel good and that you're excited about and that you will do well. But if you enjoy going out, and I'm going to guess that Alyssa does, talking to people, then you should go out and talk to people because you never know where those contacts. I mean, case in point, when I was working on Goose Bottom Books, the big thing that I wanted to do was get on NPR. Actually, I wanted to get on Oprah Winfrey, but that didn't happen. And I wanted to get on NPR. And the reason why I got on NPR was purely through a chance encounter with a woman who now is still my friend. But I met her in kind of like a semi-social situation. And she was very sweet. She said, "Can I buy your books?" I said, "Absolutely." And she didn't buy the book. It turned out she didn't buy the books for herself. She dropped them over to her friend's place. And her friend was Michelle Martin, who used to do Tell Me More and now does All Things Considered, right? And so it's like, if I wasn't out talking to people with my martini, I wouldn't have gotten the NPR gig. So you just never know where it ends. So Lynn, you have a question.
Yes. Well, first of all, just thank you. This has been really great. All 3 panelists have just, you've all been motivating and real, and thank you. My question is, I do write literary fiction, and so when I'm hearing all these great ideas for reaching out to specific readers, I wonder, what it's like to self-publish when you've got literary fiction. And I know that, so maybe that's a question more for you, Shirin, in terms of people who've done it, that kind of thing. That's
Well,
my question.
I think that actually, I have to remember which I think it used to be Nielsen, but they've been sold since then. So I can't remember what the name of the new enterprise is, but they do a report every year, and there's a breakdown as to which genres are selling well as ebooks and as print-on-demand books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, my two genres, which is literary fiction and picture books, do not sell in either of those, on those platforms. To date, they haven't. That doesn't mean that they can't. There was a self-published poetry book, which, I mean, there's nothing more literary and more difficult to sell than poetry, I would argue. Land of Milk and Honey, I think it was called, that just went absolutely viral and did fantastically. But having said that, that writer had an amazing following on TikTok. I think that she had over 1 million followers, so she was really well set up to start. In general, the honest answer is that no, it's a big genres that do best. They also do best because, 250 books over the lifetime of a title is very little. But if you're dropping a new title every quarter, those numbers can start to add up. And because the tail is long, someone who comes and in Lynn's case finds her third book and discovers they like her third book, well, they'll then go back and read book, 1 and 2, even though these are not even cozy mysteries and related, like they're a different series, like they're not in the series at all. People will just go and find the author once they've encountered that author. But yeah, literary fiction doesn't usually sell that way, unfortunately.
I might add to that, and I don't know. So, Publisher Rocket is something that might be useful even for literary fiction, I would think, because it really like breaks down where your book would like line up against other books and where you're most competitive on different keywords and that kind of stuff. So, I wonder if that would. I think that it's really designed for any kind of book that you just find what your genres are and you find what sort of keywords and target words will help people find your book. So I would say, like, take a look at that.
And I would say that genre is ultimately a marketing decision, right? Mm-hmm. And so even if you write lit fic, if you can market it in a way that upmarket or book club fiction or women's fiction can relate to it, right? Then that's a better market to sell into. And so, for example, like, it's my hot take that Emily Henry doesn't write romance. She writes women's fiction with a romance bent, and she bleeds into the romance genre to capture romance dollars, right? And so it's a very advantageous marketing decision on her publisher's part to bleed the line between genres. And so if you have a harder to sell genre, are there inroads into more commercial genres that aren't deceptive, right? Like, don't sell a romance that's not a romance, but can you get close enough to a genre that may be more commercial and get more traction that way? So doesn't mean you can't write in a literary style, but can you like capture the right audience with it?
And I would go that even in addition to genres, is is there anything in the setting that, so I'm writing a literary book at the moment, but it's got very distinct times and places. So that makes it easier for me to market, because if I can tap into the people who are interested in those times and places, I can find those readers that way. So, on the other hand, if you're writing something that really is such like could kind of take place anywhere in any place, and it's a little harder to hook on to. So, but there are ways Always ways and means. George, you have a question?
I do. I have a book out from a small indie press, Hot Dish Confidential, that You're My Friends Taught Me to Cook. And it's not a cookbook. It's a first person narrative. I don't think of it as a memoir. But being with a small indie press is a lot like self-publishing. You've got to get out and sell the books. And I've sold about over 1,200 books the first year. And a lot of that was me finding events to go to, because once I get in front of people and talk to them, I can sell the books. I live in Oregon and I go to wineries and do events there. My question is about Instagram. I wonder if anyone has used it. I've played around with it, and there's a way to boost the score or boost the distribution. And of course, you pay money for that. What's the best way to do that? What's been your experience? Am I wasting my time, or should I do more of it?
Yeah, I can speak to this. Instagram is my primary social media channel. I don't do any paid advertising yet. The general rule of thumb is that paid advertising is going to have a better ROI once you have at least 3 books in a series, because oftentimes you're going to be losing money on that first book. When it comes to boosting versus running actual ad campaigns, I would say if you have a specific goal in mind, like if you have a book launch or if you're trying to get ARC readers, you have like an actual call to action, boosting a post can be helpful for like a short period of time, whether it's like, a few days or a week. But if you have something more evergreen and you're just trying to build momentum for a specific title, you're better off running like larger scale ad campaigns. And so I highly recommend, if there's something, if advertising is of interest to you, check out, his name is Nicholas Eric. Sign up for his newsletter. It's the most valuable information that I know about Facebook ads and Amazon ads. And so, and I can drop his information in the chat. But yeah, so think about your budget, think about the goal, like what do you want to actually send people to when it comes to those ads? And think about the best way to like get that call to action to function. And be aware that social media platforms are built to take your dollars. So the more you rely on paid advertising, the more you're training your algorithm to capture your audience and prioritize paid advertising. So it's a double-edged sword, right? If you are heavy on ads, you're basically telling Meta, I spend a lot of money on ads. And so you just have to kind of be mindful of that.
Okay. Michelle, you have a question?
I do. Are any of you on Book Talk, or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I'm also on TikTok. I don't particularly like it. I'm a millennial. I'm 35, and so I don't particularly enjoy video marketing. That said, it really depends on your audience. So TikTok is primarily used with teenagers and young women. It is heavily focused on the big genres like romance and mystery and thriller, and some book club fiction on top of that. And so figure out what your readers are. If you're not primarily, marketing to like 18 to 22-year-olds, like maybe TikTok isn't the best platform for you. And you have to remember that in order to make traction in any social media, you have to use it regularly. I have a post that I can share in the chat about my thoughts about this, but the people who are doing TikTok really well, and I don't want to scare anybody, but the authors who are doing TikTok really well have multiple accounts, and they're posting multiple times a day. And so it takes a lot of effort to gain a lot of traction, because the goal of TikTok is not necessarily to curate an audience of followers. It's to blast information at the For You page as often as possible. And if that doesn't sound like fun to you, not really that fun for me, then just be mindful that that's what that platform is meant for.
I would jump into and say, like, I figure my readers are probably more likely to be on Facebook, because they're probably women, either 35 and above, the cozy mystery readers, and just given who my character is. And so I've actually been working with somebody to help me understand sort of the Facebook ads. I kind of had learned about the Amazon ads, but I just happened to, somebody I play pickleball with turns out to do Facebook ads. So he sat down with me and we set up an ad campaign, and I'm sort of seeing something from that. So yeah, I agree that I think you have to figure out which social media your readers are gonna find your stuff on. And I keep thinking I'm gonna learn about TikTok and Book Talk, but I never get around to it. So I think you probably don't have to have learned every single social media that there is and try to use them all, and take your time to learn the ones that might best fit your readers.
I was convinced to get on Instagram like within the last year, I think. And I think I had like 26 followers and 27 following or something like that. And I was, oh God, it's just so not me. And I got my niece to teach me how to do it. Like she actually sat down and gave me a tutorial. And and I was whinging about it to my brother, you know. I was like, this Instagram thing, blah. And he just turned around and he said, wait a minute. He said, Instagram. He said, you probably for those who don't know my brother, like he's big into all of this tech stuff. So I said, he's like, you probably don't want to be there. You probably want to be on Facebook. And I thought, isn't that funny? Because Facebook, I haven't once tried to grow my following on Facebook ever. And it's not huge, but it is it's like much bigger than Instagram, or I did Twitter for a while, any of those. And the interesting thing is my Facebook followers, they show up. Like every time I post something, which is once every, 6 months or so, everyone comments on it. Like they're engaged for some reason. So I kind of just think that I think that there's so much available now that there's this feeling that you have to be able to do it all. And really, I don't think that you have to be able to do it all. I think that what you need to do is figure out two things. One, where are your readers? Because you do need to do that. Whatever that is, you need to do it. And the other thing is, what do you do well naturally that you enjoy? So if at the end of the day, you go, oh, well, I haven't actually made any money out of this career, but hell, I've had such a good time that doing all of this is actually adding to the good time instead of detracting from it.
Yeah, and I would add too, like there's just a couple social, I do some Facebook. I really used to like Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky now, and Instagram. And it's not for me just about trying to promote my book. I like to post things that just generally other people like. If it's a picture of my dog, if it's fun, like I think you can grow sort of organic connection to people. The whole point of like what I'm trying to do with my books is to connect with people who might enjoy something I enjoy. And it's the same thing with the posting. And I don't want to just blast them with ads for things. I want to share something I enjoyed in my day. Like here's this really cool look at, a cup of coffee where they did a cool design on top. I think people like that too. Like it's not just about like getting them to buy something from you, but it's also about sharing who you are and what you like and making those connections.
Yeah. And that's why I know we're at the top of the hour. That's why I'm also on Substack. So if you like blogging, if you like building community, I highly recommend it. I am an email marketing expert. I've been working in the email marketing industry for almost a decade now. And so I highly recommend, if you want to subscribe to my Substack, if you have questions about building a mailing list, that is ultimately the best thing you probably could do to build a platform, honestly. And I have a whole host of reasons why. But I'm on Instagram and Substack primarily. And you're welcome to throw all of your questions at me.
Great. Is there anything else? Anybody? Any more questions? If not, can we turn our mics back on and give the panel a round of applause? Thank you, everybody, for being with us and for making this first panel so successful. And I really enjoyed the time that I spent with you ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Bye.